My name is Marissa Jenkins, 34 years old, and I've poured 15 years of my life into Jenkins Family Furniture, our high-end family business. Woodworking and design have been my passion since childhood. Everything changed last month when Dad announced his retirement. I always felt second best to my golden sister Jessica, but nothing prepared me for the moment Dad handed over the entire company to her instead of me. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button to discover how I transformed this crushing betrayal into my greatest triumph. The Jenkins family furniture story began long before I was born. My grandfather, Thomas Jenkins, started the business in his garage in 1952, crafting custom tables and chairs for neighbors. His meticulous attention to detail and commitment to quality materials quickly earned him a reputation throughout our small Pennsylvania town. By the time my father William took over in the late 1980s, Jenkins Furniture had grown into a respected regional brand with a modest showroom and workshop employing 15 craftspeople. My earliest memories revolve around that workshop. While other 5-year-olds played with dolls, I was fascinated by the smell of freshly cut oak and the rhythmic sounds of sanding. Dad would lift me onto his workbench, letting me sort different wood samples by texture and color. I remember the pride in his eyes when I correctly identified maple from cherry at age 7. Those rare moments of his approval became addictive. "You've got a good eye, Marissa," he'd say. "Maybe someday you'll design something special for us." Throughout elementary school, I spent every Saturday at the shop, graduating from sorting wood samples to sketching simple designs and eventually learning basic finishing techniques. By 13, I could name every tool in the workshop and explain each step in the furniture-making process. The employees called me Little Boss, a nickname I treasured. My teenage bedroom walls weren't covered with boy band posters, but with furniture designs I'd sketched and magazine cutouts from Architectural Digest and fine woodworking. While my friends discussed prom dresses, I debated the merits of dovetail joints versus dowels. When college decision time arrived, my path was clear. Unlike my sister Jessica, who changed her major 3 times before settling on communications, I chose Penn State's business program specifically to prepare myself for expanding our family legacy. I double majored in business administration and design, sacrificing the typical college experience for internships and extra courses in marketing and supply chain management. Summer breaks weren't breaks for me. While Jessica traveled Europe with friends, I returned home to work full-time at the showroom, learning every aspect of the business. By graduation, I understood not just the creative side, but the operational backbone of furniture manufacturing and retail. Dad seemed impressed with my business degree, but his praise was always measured, always with conditions. "Let's see how you apply what you've learned," he'd say, never quite giving the unqualified approval I craved. Still, I threw myself into the family business with everything I had. Within 2 years of joining full-time, I had completely modernized our inventory management system, reducing waste by 27%. I created our first comprehensive online catalog and established relationships with interior designers across 3 states. In my 5th year, I designed the Riverside Collection, a series of sleek modern pieces that honored our traditional craftsmanship while appealing to younger urban clients. When the collection won the Regional Excellence in Furniture Design Award, I thought Dad would finally see my true value. He smiled briefly at the ceremony, but quickly shifted the conversation to expanding our workshop space. I declined 2 dream job offers from prestigious design firms in New York and Chicago. The salary would have been triple what I made working for my father, but money wasn't my motivation. This was family. This was legacy. This was my future. My personal life took a backseat to my professional commitments. Dating was sporadic and rarely progressed beyond a few months. "You're married to that furniture store," my last boyfriend complained before we broke up. He wasn't wrong. Weekends, holidays, evenings, the business always came first. I was 34 with no serious relationship prospects, but I had convinced myself it was a worthwhile sacrifice for the day I would take my rightful place at the helm of Jenkins Family Furniture. Jessica, meanwhile, had always been Dad's favorite, despite her minimal interest in the business. 2 years younger than me, she possessed the natural charisma and sociability I lacked. Where I was analytical and detail-oriented, Jessica was spontaneous and outgoing. Dad called her his sunshine girl and forgave her every misstep. After college, Jessica bounced between marketing jobs, never staying more than a year before getting bored and moving on. She worked for a record label in Nashville, did public relations for a resort in Miami, and briefly ran social media for a startup in Austin. She occasionally popped into the store when visiting home, charming the employees and customers with her bubbly personality before disappearing again. Despite her absence, Jessica's opinion somehow carried more weight with Dad than my daily contributions. "Jessica thinks we should update our logo," he'd announce, immediately implementing her casual suggestion while my carefully researched proposals gathered dust on his desk. Still, I reasoned, Jessica wasn't interested in furniture. She had her own path. The business would be mine someday. Dad had implied it countless times, discussing future expansion after the transition and asking my thoughts on long-term vendor relationships. I was the one who had earned it through years of dedication and sacrifice. That was the unspoken understanding, or so I thought. My sister Jessica and I were like night and day from the beginning. While I was a serious, thoughtful child who could sit for hours focused on a single task, Jessica flitted between interests like a hummingbird between flowers, never settling long enough to develop true expertise. In elementary school, she joined and quickly abandoned ballet, soccer, piano, and pottery classes, each time with Dad indulgently purchasing expensive equipment that soon collected dust. "She's finding her passion," he'd explain, while my consistent dedication to our family business was simply expected. Jessica had Dad's charisma and outgoing nature. At family gatherings, they commanded attention together, telling animated stories, while Mom and I quietly handled the practical details of hosting. I observed their connection with a mixture of envy and resignation, wondering why my accomplishments never sparked the same pride in his eyes that Jessica's mere presence seemed to evoke. Mom tried her best to balance Dad's obvious favoritism. She'd seek me out in the kitchen after Jessica received lavish praise for a mediocre report card. "Your father appreciates your reliability, Marissa," she'd assure me, squeezing my shoulder. "He just doesn't always show it well." These attempts at comfort only highlighted the disparity. Why should reliability and dedication merit less recognition than Jessica's superficial charm? Still, I channeled my hurt into determination, certain that sustained excellence would eventually win Dad's full approval. At Jenkins Furniture, I gradually became the unofficial second-in-command. Employees brought problems to me first, knowing I'd handle issues efficiently, while Dad focused on client relationships. I modernized our accounting practices, established our first employee benefits package, and personally supervised the expansion of our workshop to accommodate growing demand. During quarterly planning meetings, Dad occasionally hinted at succession. "When Marissa takes over someday, we'll need to consider expanding the showroom further," he'd remark casually. Or, "That's a major investment, but it could pay off under Marissa's leadership down the road." These comments sustained me through 60-hour work weeks and sacrificed personal milestones. Each hint reinforced my belief that my dedication wasn't going unnoticed, that ultimately merit would matter more than favoritism. Everything changed 6 months ago, when Jessica returned home after her latest venture. A travel blog that had failed to gain traction fell apart. Initially, she crashed in her old bedroom, just until I figure out my next move, but weeks stretched into months. To my surprise, Jessica suddenly started showing interest in the family business. She began dropping by the showroom regularly, asking questions about operations and profit margins that she'd never bothered with before. During these visits, she'd casually mention innovative ideas for social media marketing or suggest partnerships with local businesses. Dad lapped up her every suggestion. "Jessica has such a fresh perspective." He'd marvel, implementing her ideas immediately, while projects I'd carefully developed for months remained pending his approval. Sunday family dinners became increasingly tense as Jessica dominated conversations with her grand visions for Jenkins Furniture. "We should really focus on becoming an experience, not just a furniture store," she'd declare, gesturing with her wineglass. "People want stories, not just products." Dad would nod enthusiastically, while I silently calculated the implementation costs of her vague proposals. When I raised practical concerns, Dad would wave them away. "You're always so focused on problems, Marissa. Try to think more expansively like your sister." One particularly painful Sunday, Dad mentioned the upcoming retirement announcement for the first time. "I've been thinking it's time to start the next chapter," he said, his gaze lingering meaningfully on Jessica. "New blood might be exactly what Jenkins Furniture needs." My stomach tightened, but I reassured myself. Surely new blood referred to my long-awaited promotion to CEO, not Jessica's recent superficial interest. After 15 years of dedicated service, after learning every aspect of the business inside and out, the succession plan couldn't possibly change based on a few months of Jessica's fleeting enthusiasm. "We'll make the announcement at next month's company dinner," Dad continued. "Time to look toward the future." I spent the next few weeks preparing detailed transition plans and a 5-year growth strategy. I stayed late every night refining projections and creating comprehensive documentation to ensure a smooth handover. Jessica, meanwhile, spent more time in Dad's office with the door closed, their conversations stopping abruptly whenever I entered the room. A nagging worry began to grow, but I dismissed it. My sister's sudden interest was probably just another phase. Soon she'd move on to her next adventure, and the natural order would reassert itself. The business would pass to the person who had dedicated her life to it. To me. I couldn't have been more wrong. The evening of my father's retirement announcement arrived with all the pomp and circumstance befitting his 35 years at the helm of Jenkins Family Furniture. The event was held at the Riverside Hotel Ballroom with nearly 100 people in attendance: employees, major clients, family friends, and business associates. I arrived early to ensure everything was perfect, checking the seating arrangements and confirming the catering details. I wore a new tailored navy suit and had even splurged on having my hair and makeup professionally done. Tonight would mark the beginning of my leadership era, the culmination of 15 years of sacrifice and dedication. Dad had been unusually distant during the preceding week, canceling our regular strategy lunch and rescheduling 2 meetings at the last minute. I attributed his behavior to the emotions surrounding his retirement. After all, the business had been his life for decades. Jessica arrived fashionably late, drawing all eyes in her red designer dress. She air-kissed her way through the crowd while I checked in with the audiovisual team about Dad's presentation. Several longtime employees gave me knowing smiles and discreet thumbs up, silently acknowledging what everyone assumed was about to happen. "Tonight's your big night," whispered Greta, our head of customer relations, who had worked for Dad since before I was born. "He's making the right choice. Everyone knows it." The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur. I barely tasted the salmon as I mentally rehearsed what I would say when Dad called me up to formally accept the leadership position. I'd keep it humble but confident, acknowledging his legacy while hinting at exciting new directions. After dessert, Dad approached the podium and the room quieted. He looked distinguished in his best suit, his silver hair catching the light. He cleared his throat and began speaking about his journey with the company, from working alongside his father as a young man to expanding the business into what it had become today. "Change is inevitable," he said, smiling warmly at the audience, "and sometimes we need fresh eyes, new perspectives to take something good and make it even better." My heart swelled. This was it. Jenkins Family Furniture has been blessed with incredible talent over the years, Dad continued, and no one has shown more natural leadership potential and innovative thinking than my daughter. I began to rise slightly from my seat, ready for my cue. "Jessica Jenkins," Dad announced, proudly extending his hand toward my sister. The room seemed to tilt sideways. A rushing sound filled my ears as Jessica bounced up from her seat, feigning surprise despite the obviously rehearsed moment. Had he actually said Jessica's name? I remained half standing, frozen in shock, before slowly sinking back into my chair. "Jessica brings a wealth of marketing experience from various industries," Dad continued as she joined him at the podium. "Her fresh vision and dynamic approach are exactly what will carry Jenkins Furniture into the next generation." I sat rigidly, my face a careful mask, as my entire world imploded. 15 years of dedication dismissed in an instant. Every sacrifice rendered meaningless. All around me, people wore expressions of surprise or discomfort. Several glanced at me with pity, quickly looking away when I met their eyes. Jessica gave a bubbly speech about honoring traditions while embracing innovation, using buzzwords that demonstrated her superficial understanding of the business. She'd clearly prepared extensively for this moment, while I'd been completely blindsided. "Of course, Marissa will continue to play an important role in the company," Jessica added magnanimously, as though throwing me a bone. "Her attention to detail and technical knowledge will remain valuable assets to our team." Our team. Her team. I was no longer even second in command, but relegated to some undefined supporting role in the business I had helped build. The rest of the evening passed in a fog of handshakes and forced smiles. I mechanically accepted congratulations on my father's retirement and deflected uncomfortable questions about the succession announcement. Inside, I was screaming, but years of professional discipline kept my composure intact. As guests began leaving, Marcus, our production manager who had taught me finishing techniques when I was 16, pulled me aside. "This isn't right, Marissa," he muttered, genuine anger in his voice. Everyone knows you built this place alongside your dad. Jessica doesn't know the first thing about furniture manufacturing. Thanks, Marcus. I managed my voice surprisingly steady. But it's a family decision. We'll all adapt. Once the last guests departed, I slipped out without saying goodbye to Dad or Jessica, who were surrounded by well-wishers. I couldn't bear their triumph, or worse, their pity. In my car, I sat motionless, staring through the windshield at nothing. The drive home remains a blur in my memory. Somehow I navigated the familiar roads on autopilot tears, finally spilling once I was alone. I remembered every extra hour I'd worked, every vacation I'd canceled, every relationship I'd neglected, all for a future that had been snatched away without warning. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my shock had hardened into something sharper and colder. This wasn't just disappointment. This was betrayal of the deepest kind from the two people who should have valued me most. Somehow, despite 15 years of proving myself daily, I still wasn't good enough in my father's eyes. I walked into my empty house, kicked off my heels, and finally allowed myself to break down completely. The morning after the announcement, I woke with swollen eyes and a hollowness in my chest that felt physical. For 15 minutes, I stared at my ceiling, contemplating calling in sick. But that would only confirm whatever Dad thought about my inadequacy for leadership. Instead, I dragged myself through my morning routine, armoring myself in another crisp suit, and carefully applied makeup that concealed the evidence of my sleepless night. Alone in my kitchen, I scrolled through dozens of sympathetic text messages from employees and industry colleagues. Everyone seemed shocked by Dad's decision, except apparently Dad and Jessica. The realization that they had planned this ambush together, deliberately keeping me in the dark, renewed the ache in my chest. Throughout the morning, I alternated between numbing disbelief and flashes of rage. How could Dad dismiss my years of dedication so completely? What qualifications did Jessica actually possess beyond being his favorite? The questions circled endlessly as I drove to the office, rehearsing what I would say when I inevitably confronted him. The showroom felt different that morning, conversations hushed as I entered, eyes darting away from mine. My small office, once a source of pride with its views of the workshop, now felt like a consolation prize. Jessica hadn't arrived yet, but Dad's car was already in his reserved spot, soon to be Jessica's, I supposed. After answering urgent emails, I stood and smoothed my jacket. It was time. I wouldn't yell or cry. I would simply ask for an explanation I deserved. Dad looked up from his computer when I knocked on his open door, his expression guarded. For a moment I saw him assess my emotional state, perhaps relieved to find me composed rather than hysterical. "Morning, Marissa. Quite an evening, wasn't it?" The response has been overwhelmingly positive. His casual tone ignited something in me. "Why?" The single word came out steadier than I expected. Dad sighed, leaning back in the leather chair I'd selected as a Christmas gift 3 years ago. "I know this is difficult for you to understand right now." "Try me," I interrupted uncharacteristically. "Explain to me why Jessica, who has shown zero commitment to this company and possesses no relevant experience, is suddenly its CEO while I'm— What exactly am I now?" "Dad." He frowned at my tone. "You're still department head of design and operations. Nothing changes there." "Everything changes. You've made it abundantly clear that 15 years of dedication means nothing compared to being your favorite." Dad's expression hardened. "That's unfair, Marissa. This decision wasn't personal. It was strategic. Jessica brings outside perspective and natural leadership qualities the company needs right now." Natural leadership. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. She's never led anything. Her resume is a series of abandoned positions and failed ventures. "That's exactly my point," Dad countered, as though I'd somehow proved his argument. "Jessica has diverse experience across multiple industries. She understands modern marketing and social media in ways you never bothered to learn. Jenkins Furniture needs innovation to survive, not just maintenance of the status quo." Each word landed like a physical blow. Maintenance, I increased our revenue by 35% over 5 years. I expanded our client base to 3 new states. I created award-winning designs while simultaneously managing operations. "And we appreciate that work," Dad said dismissively. "But Jessica has vision. She connects with people instantly, clients, employees, vendors. You've always struggled with the human element, Marissa. You're technical detail-oriented. Those are valuable skills, but they don't make a CEO." The casual cruelty of his assessment, reducing my multifaceted contributions to cold technicality while elevating Jessica's superficial charm to visionary leadership, left me momentarily speechless. I've always seen you as an excellent employee, Dad continued, oblivious to the devastation his words caused. But Jessica has that intangible quality that inspires people. Surely you've noticed how everyone responds to her. Employee, not daughter, not successor, not partner, just an employee. 15 years of loyalty distilled to an employment relationship. So this was never going to be mine, I finally asked, my voice small. All those hints about succession, about my future leadership, what was that? Dad had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Business evolves, Marissa. Plans change. Jessica will need your expertise, though. You'll always have a place here. A place. Not my place. Not the place I'd earned. Just a place. Our conversation was interrupted by Mom appearing in the doorway. She must have heard raised voices. "Everything okay in here?" she asked tentatively. "Just discussing the transition," Dad replied smoothly. I turned to her, hoping for support. "Did you know about this, Mom, that Dad was planning to give everything to Jessica?" Mom's eyes flickered with momentary guilt before she composed herself. "Your father makes the business decisions, Marissa. I'm sure he considered everything carefully." Her diplomatic non-answer told me everything. She had known and said nothing. Another betrayal. "Jessica has some wonderful ideas," Mom added weakly, "and you two have always made a good team. Different strengths, you know." We had never been a team. Jessica had never shown the slightest interest in collaboration. As if summoned by her mention, Jessica appeared behind Mom, dressed in a fashionable business outfit I'd never seen before. Had she been shopping for her new CEO wardrobe while I'd been piecing together our quarterly inventory reports? "Morning, family," Jessica beamed, either oblivious to or ignoring the tension. "Marissa, I'm so glad you're here. I was hoping we could meet this morning to discuss department restructuring." Restructuring. She'd been CEO for less than 24 hours and already planned to dismantle what I'd built. "I think we should establish a design team under your leadership." Jessica continued, her tone dripping with condescension disguised as generosity. "That way you can focus on what you do best without all those administrative distractions." Translation: she was stripping away my operational authority while pretending to do me a favor. I looked between the three of them, Dad confident in his decision, Mom uncomfortable but acquiescent, Jessica triumphant, and realized with startling clarity that I was entirely alone. "I have inventory to review," I said flatly, turning toward the door. "We can discuss restructuring later." As I walked away, I heard Jessica's bright voice. "Great. I'm thinking we need to pivot toward more Instagram-friendly pieces. The future is in millennial apartment solutions." It took every ounce of professional control not to slam the door behind me. The weeks following Jessica's ascension were the darkest of my life. I moved through each day in a fog, performing my duties with mechanical precision while emotionally disconnected from the business that had once been my passion. The showroom that had felt like home now seemed like a beautifully appointed prison. My world had narrowed to surviving each day without breaking down. I stopped eating lunch in the staff room instead, sitting alone in my car or taking aimless drives. Sleep became elusive, my nights spent cycling through anger, hurt, and plans for confrontations I'd never actually initiate. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks, my suits hanging loosely on my frame. Meanwhile, Jessica embraced her new role with theatrical enthusiasm. She rearranged the administrative offices, claiming Dad's corner suite, and installing a new sleek desk that clashed with the traditional aesthetic of our showroom. She called endless brainstorming meetings where she'd write buzzwords on whiteboards while asking for blue sky thinking and disruptive innovations. Most painfully, she began systematically dismantling systems I'd carefully built. The inventory management software I'd customized for our specific needs, replaced with an expensive but inefficient cloud-based solution that confused our warehouse staff. The quarterly customer appreciation events that had built client loyalty canceled in favor of Instagram giveaways targeting people who couldn't afford our products. "We need to broaden our appeal," Jessica explained when I questioned these decisions. "Your approach was too niche, too traditional. The future is digital, Marissa." She hired 2 20-something brand ambassadors with marketing degrees but zero furniture knowledge. They spent their days staging elaborate photo shoots of our artisanal pieces adorned with incongruous props, creating images that racked up likes but didn't translate to sales. Through it all, Dad remained conspicuously absent. Having formally retired, he now only appeared for occasional advisory meetings with Jessica, pointedly excluding me from these sessions. The message was clear: the torch had been passed, and I wasn't even worthy of witnessing the transition. By the 6th week of Jessica's reign, sales had begun to slip. Longtime clients expressed confusion about our new direction, and several canceled custom orders. Our craftspeople grew increasingly frustrated with constantly changing priorities and the lack of clear communication from management. I documented these concerns meticulously, but kept them to myself. Some petty wounded part of me wanted to watch Jessica fail to see Dad acknowledge his mistake. Yet another part, the part that had poured 15 years into this company, ached to see our family legacy deteriorating in real time. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Sandra, our accounting manager, who had been with the company for 22 years, knocked on my office door. Her expression was troubled as she closed the door behind her. "Marissa, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but something strange is happening with the financial reports," she said in a low voice. "Jessica asked me to prepare projections based on selling off the manufacturing division and outsourcing production to an overseas supplier." The news hit me like a physical blow. Our custom manufacturing was the heart of Jenkins Furniture. Dad had always been adamant about keeping production local, using sustainable American hardwoods, and maintaining direct quality control. "That can't be right," I said, shaking my head. "Dad would never allow that." Sandra's expression turned sympathetic. "William signed off on the preliminary research last week. Jessica said it was his idea originally, that he'd wanted to make the change for years, but never had the courage to pull the trigger." I sat back stunned. If true, this revelation cast my father's dedication to craftsmanship, the value he'd instilled in me since childhood, as mere theater. Had it all been a performance, with selling out always the endgame? "There's more," Sandra continued hesitantly. "I overheard Jessica on the phone with someone from Craftsman Consolidated. They're discussing acquisition terms, not just manufacturing partnerships." Craftsman Consolidated was a corporate furniture conglomerate known for buying family businesses, stripping their assets, and slapping their respected names on mass-produced lower-quality merchandise. They were everything Jenkins Furniture stood against, or so I'd thought. That evening I stayed late waiting until the showroom emptied. Using my administrative access that Jessica hadn't yet revoked, I searched through her company emails. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Jessica had been in talks with Craftsman since before Dad's retirement. The acquisition timeline showed negotiations beginning nearly 4 months earlier, precisely when Jessica had suddenly returned home and developed her convenient interest in the family business. Digging deeper into attached documents, I found preliminary terms outlining a multi-million-dollar buyout. Jessica would receive an enormous cash payment plus a 5-year consulting contract with minimal obligations. Dad would retain lifetime benefits and a generous pension. The Jenkins name would continue on a new heritage line of furniture. My name appeared exactly once in the 60-page document in a section addressing current management retention. I would be offered a standard 1-year severance package or the option to interview for a design position with the parent company in their headquarters 6 states away. I was printing key documents when I heard the showroom door open. Quickly closing the files, I pretended to be reviewing customer orders as Jessica walked in, surprised to find me still there. "Working late, that's dedication," she said with artificial brightness. "Though you should really try to develop some work-life balance, Marissa. All work and no play, you know." The condescension from someone who had never demonstrated genuine dedication to anything was the final straw. "I know about Craftsman Consolidated," I stated flatly. Jessica's smile faltered momentarily before recovering. "Oh, you found out? Yes, exciting potential partnership opportunity. Still in early stages, of course." "Partnership? You're selling the company. You're dismantling everything Dad and Grandpa built, everything I've worked to preserve and grow." Jessica's friendly facade dropped, her expression turning coldly practical. "I'm being realistic about market conditions. Dad's been wanting to sell for years. He just couldn't bear to be the one to do it. So he made you CEO as a sacrificial lamb to do his dirty work. Don't be dramatic." Jessica rolled her eyes. "He made me CEO because he trusts my judgment. The market for custom furniture is shrinking. Labor costs are unsustainable. The Jenkins name has value, but the business model is outdated. Dad recognized that. And the fact that you'll walk away with millions while I get a basic severance package after 15 years, that's just coincidental." Jessica shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. "Business is business, Marissa. Dad needed someone who could make the hard decisions without emotional attachment. You're too invested in how things have always been done." "You mean I actually care about craftsmanship, employees, and customer relationships, guilty as charged?" "Those are luxury concerns in today's market. Jessica countered dismissively. Besides, you'll get a decent severance. You should be grateful Craftsman initially wanted to terminate all existing management immediately. Grateful. For being discarded after dedicating my entire adult life to this company. The sheer audacity left me speechless. You have design skills, Jessica added, gathering her purse to leave. You'll find something. Maybe this is your chance to finally develop a personality beyond Jenkins Furniture. It's honestly been sad watching you with no identity outside this place. As she walked out, leaving me alone in the darkened showroom, surrounded by pieces I had helped design, market, and sell, I felt something inside me finally break completely. The business I loved had never truly been mine to lose. I had been nothing but a caretaker maintaining the asset until my father and sister decided to cash it out. I drove home in a daze, pulled into my garage, and sat in silence as rain pattered against my windshield. For the first time in my adult life, I had no plan, no next step, no clear path forward. Everything I had built my identity around was being sold to the highest bidder, with my consent neither required nor desired. That night, I seriously contemplated leaving everything behind, selling my house, moving across the country, starting completely fresh where no one knew me as the Jenkins daughter who wasn't good enough to inherit the family business. I poured a glass of wine, then another, searching for comfort that didn't come. Rock bottom, I discovered, wasn't the public humiliation of the retirement party or even the cruel conversation with my father. Rock bottom was this quiet realization of my complete replaceability, not just to the business, but to my own family. 3 days after discovering the Craftsman consolidated negotiations, I sat at my kitchen table staring at an untouched cup of coffee when my phone rang. The number wasn't one I recognized, but in my emotionally drained state, I answered without thinking. Marissa Jenkins speaking. Marissa, thank goodness I reached you. It's Marco Delgado from Delgado Developments. Marco's name sparked a flicker of recognition through my fog. He'd been a major client 2 years ago when his company was furnishing a boutique hotel in Philadelphia. We'd worked closely on custom pieces that balanced luxury with durability. Marco, hello. What can I do for you? I managed, trying to inject some professionalism into my voice. I've been trying to reach you at Jenkins Furniture for 3 days. Your receptionist keeps routing me to someone named Brittany, who seems very nice but knows absolutely nothing about furniture. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Brittany was one of Jessica's brand ambassadors, whose furniture knowledge extended only to what looked good on Instagram. I'm sorry about that. We've had some organizational changes recently. How can I help? We're developing a new corporate headquarters with an attached luxury apartment complex. I need someone who understands both high-end residential and commercial furnishing needs. After the incredible work you did on our hotel project, you're the only person I trust with this. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of professional pride. That's very flattering, Marco. What's your timeline? That's the thing, we're already behind schedule. I need preliminary designs within a month. Is that something Jenkins can handle with your current workload? An idea began forming, something reckless and terrifying, but also potentially liberating. Actually, Marco Jenkins Furniture is undergoing some significant changes right now, but I might have an alternative suggestion. Could we meet for lunch tomorrow to discuss? We arranged to meet at a restaurant downtown, and after ending the call, I sat motionless, contemplating the seed of possibility. For the first time since the retirement party, I felt something other than despair, a dangerous flutter of hope. That afternoon at work, I observed the showroom with fresh eyes. Jessica was in her office on a conference call, gesturing dramatically while talking about strategic synergies with someone from Craftsman. The 2 brand ambassadors were arranging our handcrafted walnut dining table with artificial succulents and mass-produced decorative books for a photo shoot. Marcus, our production manager, caught my eye from across the room. His expression reflected my own disillusionment. Later, he stopped by my office under the pretense of discussing an order. Things are bad in the workshop, he confided quietly. Jessica's talking about laying off 3 craftsmen next month as part of streamlining production. She doesn't understand that these guys have specialized skills that took decades to develop. She understands, I replied grimly. She just doesn't care. The manufacturing division won't exist once Craftsman takes over. Marcus's face paled. So the rumors are true. We're being sold. I hesitated, then nodded slightly. Keep that to yourself for now. But yes, it's in progress. This is wrong, Marissa. Your grandfather would be heartbroken. Your father too if he wasn't so blinded by Jessica. I finished, when Marcus diplomatically trailed off. He nodded. Half the staff is already updating their resumes. Nobody wants to work for a corporate machine. We came to Jenkins because we care about quality craftsmanship. That conversation was the first of several similar ones over the next few days. Without actively seeking them out, I found myself having quiet, candid discussions with long-time employees who sought me out to express their concerns and disappointment. Many asked outright if I had any plans to challenge Jessica's leadership or the pending sale. I deflected these questions while gathering information about who might be considering leaving and which clients were expressing dissatisfaction with the new direction. A picture emerged of a company in steeper decline than even I had realized. Several major clients had already quietly moved their business to competitors after disappointing interactions with Jessica or her inexperienced new hires. My lunch with Marco proved even more illuminating. Over salads at an upscale bistro, he elaborated on his new project, a $20 million development requiring custom furnishings throughout. I'll be honest, Marissa, I came to Jenkins specifically for you. Your aesthetic sensibility and attention to detail on our last project were exceptional. But when I called this week, your sister told me the company is moving in an exciting new direction focused on accessible design solutions. I winced. Jessica's buzzword soup translated to lower quality at higher volume. She suggested I might be more comfortable with another provider if I was set on traditional craftsmanship. Marco continued making air quotes, then tried to sell me on some imported line they're developing. Is Jenkins really abandoning custom work? Instead of defending the family business as I would have instinctively done just weeks earlier, I took a deep breath and made the leap. Marco, what would you say if I told you I might be starting my own design and furniture company, one focused exclusively on high-end custom work with impeccable craftsmanship? His eyes lit up. I'd say, where do I sign? And I'm not the only one. At least 3 other developers I'm friendly with have complained about the changes at Jenkins recently. There's always demand for genuine quality in our business. We spent the next hour discussing possibilities. Marco offered to be my first official client if I could establish operations within 2 months. The timeline was almost impossibly tight, but the challenge ignited something in me that had been dormant since the retirement party. That evening, I made 2 crucial calls. The first was to James Werner, a former Jenkins client who had repeatedly tried to recruit me to his venture capital firm. The second was to Patricia Ling, an attorney who specialized in business formation and had helped several friends establish their companies. Over the next week, I had clandestine meetings with both while maintaining my regular schedule at Jenkins Furniture. James was immediately enthusiastic about backing a new high-end furniture design company, especially one led by someone with my industry reputation and connections. Honestly, Marissa, I've been waiting years for you to realize you've outgrown working in your father's shadow, he told me over coffee. With your design portfolio and client relationships, plus a few key craftspeople who share your vision, we could establish something remarkable. I can secure initial funding within 10 days. Patricia helped me navigate the complex legalities of starting a competing business while still employed at Jenkins. You need to be extremely careful here, she cautioned. Don't use any proprietary information, designs, or client data from your current position. We need to establish clear boundaries to avoid potential litigation. I began working nights and weekends from my home office, creating preliminary designs for Marco's project and drafting a comprehensive business plan. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was truly mine, not an extension of my father's legacy. The next challenge was assembling a team. I approached Marcus first, meeting him for dinner at a restaurant far from our usual haunts. I'm starting my own company, I told him after we'd ordered. Focused on high-end custom work, true craftsmanship, exactly what Jenkins is abandoning. I'd like you to come with me as production director. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. I have startup funding and our first major client already committed. I'm looking at workshop space on Westbrook Avenue. I can match your current salary with profit sharing once we're established. Count me in, he said without hesitation. And I can bring Tommy and Robert from the finishing department. Both have already told me they're leaving once the Craftsman deal goes through. Over the next week, I had similar conversations with 6 other key employees, all of whom agreed to join my new venture, Artemis Design and Craft. None of us discussed these plans at work, maintaining an air of resigned acceptance, while Jenkins Furniture continued its downward spiral under Jessica's leadership. By the time I was ready to tender my resignation, I had secured funding, signed a lease on a workshop space, ordered essential equipment, and assembled a core team of 8 experienced professionals. I had also privately reached out to several long-standing Jenkins clients who had expressed dissatisfaction with recent changes, securing verbal commitments for future business. I chose a Wednesday morning to resign, timing it between Jessica's weekly marketing meeting and her regular lunch with potential investors. I walked into her office without knocking a small box containing my personal items under my arm. "I need 5 minutes," I said, closing the door behind me. Jessica glanced up from her computer, annoyed at the interruption. "I'm actually swamped right now. Can this wait until tomorrow?" "It can't. I'm resigning effective immediately." That got her full attention. She leaned back in Dad's old chair, studying me with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Resigning to go where exactly? Another furniture company." She laughed lightly. "Good luck finding one that will pay you what we do for your limited skill set." The condescension that would have wounded me weeks earlier now bounced off harmlessly. I placed my resignation letter on her desk. "I'm starting my own company, Artemis Design and Craft. We'll be focusing on high-end custom furniture for commercial and residential clients." Jessica's smile faltered slightly before recovering. "Oh, Marissa, always so dramatic. Starting a furniture company requires capital connections and charisma. You have technical skills." "I have funding clients already signed and a team of 8 Jenkins employees who are also resigning this week," I replied calmly, "including Marcus, Tommy, Robert, and Sandra from accounting." Now her smile disappeared completely. "That's ridiculous. You can't possibly—" "I also have a signed contract with Marco Delgado for furnishing his new development, the one you brushed off last month." Jessica's face flushed with anger. "This is completely unprofessional. Dad will be furious." "Dad made his choice," I replied, surprised by how little his potential disapproval bothered me now. "I'm making mine." "You'll fail within 6 months," Jessica snapped. "This business is more complicated than you realize. Without the Jenkins name, you're nobody." Her words crystallized everything wrong with how my family had treated me as an extension of the business rather than a person with intrinsic value and abilities. "I guess we'll find out," I said, turning toward the door. "One of us has actual experience running a furniture business. The other has a talent for selling things off. Time will tell which skill set is more valuable." Jessica's parting words followed me down the hallway. "Make sure you tell everyone you're quitting because you couldn't handle not being in charge. Nobody likes a sore loser, Marissa." As I walked out of Jenkins Furniture for the final time, I felt not the despair I'd anticipated, but an unexpected lightness. The betrayal had freed me from seeking approval I would never receive. Now I could build something authentically mine on my own terms without compromising my values or vision. 18 months after walking out of Jenkins Furniture for the last time, I stood in the sunlit showroom of Artemis Design and Craft, watching potential clients admire our latest collection. The space, once an abandoned textile factory, had been transformed into an airy gallery, showcasing our handcrafted furniture against exposed brick walls and polished concrete floors. The journey to this moment had been arduous, but exhilarating. The first 3 months were a chaotic blur of setting up our workshop, finalizing designs for Marco's project, and establishing operational procedures. We worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, fueled by equal parts determination and defiance. Our core team expanded from 8 to 15 as we added skilled craftspeople and designers who shared our vision of sustainable heirloom-quality furniture. Marcus proved invaluable as production director, implementing efficient systems while maintaining our commitment to traditional craftsmanship. Several artisans who had previously worked for subcontractors of Jenkins Furniture sought us out after hearing about our emphasis on quality and craftsmanship. "We're creating the company I always wished Jenkins would become," I confided to Marcus one evening as we reviewed production schedules. "Smaller, perhaps, but with genuine integrity." The Marco Delgado project became our calling card, completed on time despite our startup challenges. The exquisite custom pieces we created for his development garnered attention throughout the industry, leading to 3 additional major contracts within our first year. Unlike Jenkins Furniture's scattered approach under Jessica, we maintained a laser focus on our niche, high-end, sustainably produced custom furniture for discerning clients. We emphasized the story behind each piece, the responsibly harvested hardwoods, the time-honored joinery techniques, the artisans who touched each element of production. Our marketing strategy relied not on trendy social media gimmicks, but on the genuine relationships I had built over 15 years in the industry. Word of mouth became our most powerful tool as satisfied clients referred colleagues and friends. By our first anniversary, Artemis had established a reputation for exceptional quality and innovative design. Our small but growing client base included boutique hotels, upscale restaurants, and private collectors willing to invest in furniture that would last generations. I rarely thought about Jenkins Furniture anymore, having deliberately distanced myself from industry gossip about my former family business. Occasionally, Marcus or other team members would mention rumors of continuing struggles there, but I refrained from asking for details. The past was the past. My focus remained firmly on building Artemis into the company I envisioned. That changed the week before our annual industry showcase, when I received an unexpected invitation to participate in the Design Excellence Competition, the same award my Riverside collection had won years earlier. After some deliberation, I entered our Hearthstone series, a collection of dining furniture that combined traditional woodworking with subtle contemporary elements. The morning of the showcase, I arrived early to oversee final arrangement of our exhibition space. The convention center hummed with activity as vendors prepared elaborate displays. Artemis had a modest but prime location near the main entrance, our furniture arranged to create an inviting vignette that highlighted the craftsmanship and materials. As I adjusted the angle of a hand-carved chair, a familiar voice behind me sent a jolt through my system. "Your joinery work has always been exceptional." I turned to find my father standing awkwardly at the edge of our exhibition space, looking older and somehow smaller than I remembered. "Dad," I acknowledged neutrally, unsure what else to say after 18 months of silence. He gestured toward our display. The butterfly joints on that credenza beautiful precision. Tommy's work. Robert's, actually. Tommy focuses more on our turned elements now. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother mentioned you'd be here today. I thought it might be time to talk." We sat at a corner table overlooking the exhibition floor, 2 cups of mediocre coffee between us. Dad seemed to be gathering his thoughts, his fingers tapping nervously on the tabletop. "Jenkins Furniture sold last month," he finally said. "Not to Craftsman, a smaller conglomerate, much less than the original offer." I absorbed this news with surprising detachment. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Jessica tried," Dad continued, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "But the changes she implemented, they didn't connect with our customer base, and when key staff left," he trailed off, the implication clear. "Marcus, Tommy, Robert, and the others left because they wanted to build furniture they could be proud of," I said evenly, "not because of personal loyalty to me." Dad nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but the timing was challenging." Another silence fell. I watched teams making final adjustments to their displays below, including one where I glimpsed Jessica directing workers with animated gestures. "Is Jessica here representing the new owners?" I asked. "No." Dad sighed heavily. "Her consulting contract wasn't renewed. She started a marketing agency for luxury brands. That's her client down there." The irony might have been satisfying months earlier, but now I felt only a distant sadness for what had been lost, not just for me, but for the legacy my grandfather had built. "Your mother visits your showroom sometimes," Dad said, changing the subject. "She says your work is extraordinary." This was news to me. "Mom comes to Artemis several times. She didn't want to intrude or complicate things for you. She just watches. She's very proud, Marissa. We both made mistakes." Before I could respond, an announcement echoed through the convention center that exhibitions would open to industry professionals in 30 minutes. "I should get back to my team," I said, rising from the table. Dad stood as well, hesitating before speaking again. "I was wrong, Marissa, about you, about the business, about what matters. I let personal preference cloud my judgment, and it cost us everything: the company, our relationship, our family, harmony. I'm sorry." The apology I had once desperately craved now arrived when I no longer needed it for validation. Still, it loosened something tight within my chest. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "Would you consider, is there any chance we might rebuild some kind of relationship? Your mother misses you terribly. Sunday dinners haven't been the same." I considered his request carefully. "I'm not ready for regular family gatherings, but coffee occasionally. We could start there." Relief washed across his face. "I'd like that very much." As we returned to the exhibition floor, I spotted my mother standing near the Artemis display, admiring a rocking chair that had become one of our signature pieces. Seeing her outside the context of the Jenkins family drama, I was struck by how much older she looked, how tentative her movements had become. She noticed us approaching together and froze, uncertainty written across her features. Making a split-second decision, I moved forward and embraced her briefly. "The chair you're admiring, we've just started a limited production run," I said by way of greeting. "If you'd like one, I could have it delivered next month." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I'd love that, Marissa. It's beautiful work." The award ceremony that afternoon brought the final piece of validation I hadn't realized I was still seeking. When the Artemis Hearthstone series was announced as the Design Excellence winner, the applause that erupted contained a special enthusiasm from industry veterans who appreciated the narrative arc of my journey. From the podium, I could see my small but dedicated team beaming with pride. Marcus gave me a thumbs up while Robert and Tommy whistled loudly. In the middle distance, I glimpsed my parents standing together, Dad's arm around Mom's shoulders as they both applauded. Near the exit, I spotted Jessica watching with an unreadable expression before turning to leave. Our paths had diverged completely now, and I found I could wish her well without resentment. Her actions, painful as they were, had ultimately freed me to build something far more aligned with my values than Jenkins Furniture could ever have been under my leadership. Later that evening, celebrating with my team at a local restaurant, I found myself seated beside Elaine, our newest apprentice, a young woman with remarkable talent and fierce determination that reminded me of myself at 22. "How did you know you could actually do this?" she asked earnestly. "Start from scratch and build something so successful. Weren't you terrified of failing?" I considered her question carefully. I was absolutely terrified, but I realized something important: my worth wasn't tied to my father's approval or the family name. The skills, vision, and relationships I'd built over 15 years, those were mine regardless of who signed my paycheck. But leaving the security of an established business. "Security is often an illusion," I interrupted gently. "The business I thought would be my lifelong home was sold to strangers 18 months later. Meanwhile, what we've built together at Artemis belongs to us in a way Jenkins never really belonged to me." Across the table, Marcus raised his glass. "To Marissa, who taught us all that sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the best beginnings." As glasses clinked and conversation flowed around me, I reflected on the winding path that had brought me here. The betrayal that once seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of something far more meaningful, a company built on genuine values, relationships based on mutual respect, and a sense of self-worth that came from within rather than external validation. The Jenkins name was no longer mine, but in its place I had created something more valuable, a legacy authentically my own. Have you ever had to walk away from something you thought defined you, only to discover you were capable of building something better? Share your story in the comments. If my journey from betrayal to triumph resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this reminder. Sometimes, when people underestimate your worth, they inadvertently give you the greatest gift, the push to prove them wrong on your own terms.